Welcome back, guys. In today's video we're comparing the Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 5's price point. This is such a key factor, and to me and many others this will be their number one decision when deciding on which console to buy. Whichever one's cheaper, I'm sure many people will pick that over the exclusive games. Now obviously we've got other factors as well, which I've considered in my previous video on the comparison, but in today's video we're solely focusing down on the price, talking about the history, the price of the estimated parts in the console, the leaks that are currently out there, are they real, are they fake, the actual price which is almost confirmed through the history, and also some of the exclusive titles which could affect the price of the console and how that's going to affect the overall cost when you're actually purchasing one of these consoles. So there's a lot of factors to point out here, and I can't wait to break it all down for you. Obviously this is going to be really interesting, so let's jump straight into it and jump onto a bunch of factors regarding the actual history of the consoles. So starting off, the PlayStation 1 was the first console which released in 1994 at $299. Now obviously this had no competition at the time with Microsoft because it was actually competing with Nintendo, so we can completely write that year off and give it a W for PlayStation. Now coming in with the following year later, well a few years later, 6 years later to be precise, we've got the PlayStation 2 which actually released at $299 as well. Now we're not going to be considering inflation in this video. Obviously inflation basically means a general rise in price over time. This is just due to the economy generally growing and the way money works, etc. I don't really want to break that down too much because it can be a little bit complicated for some people, so we're not going to be considering inflation, so we'll write that off just for now. The PlayStation 2 selling a total of 155 million units in its entire lifespan. Obviously the Xbox released 1 year later in 2001 at the same price tag at $299, but they only sold 24 million. So obviously that's another victory for PlayStation in their second console. Now moving on to the next era, which is 360 versus the PlayStation 3. Originally the 360 actually came out in 2005, whereas the PlayStation 3 came out in 2006, and the 360 came in at a price tag of $399 on launch and sold a total of 84 million units over its lifespan. Now obviously the PlayStation 3 came in at $499, $100 more, and this put a lot of people off at the start. But the most surprising thing about these two figures is you'll see here the PlayStation 3 actually sold a total of 87.4 million units, which actually outsold the 360. The only reason for this was because their upgraded slim version, and Xbox towards the end of their lifespan, they started to focus on more family friendly content like the Kinect and stuff like that, whereas PlayStation focused mainly on their titles and their slimmer consoles. And what this did is it gave the actual PlayStation 3 a little bit of boost towards the end of its life, and obviously that's what overtook the Xbox. But throughout the whole years, all the way up to like 2013, the Xbox 360 was absolutely battering the PlayStation, and then right at the end it just overtook it. So you know, that's how things can change suddenly. But obviously the PlayStation 3 again comes on top technically between the Xbox 360, but you could technically give that year to Microsoft, but personally I'm going to give it to PlayStation because they clearly sold more in the long run. So that's 3 victories overall, and as you guys know, I'm unbiased. I don't prefer any of these consoles. I have owned both in the past, and obviously that's what I do throughout all my videos, giving you guys the most honest opinions. So right now PlayStation are winning though on clear figures. So moving on to the next year, which is kind of a little bit obvious, but this was in 2013, and obviously the PlayStation 4 came in at $399 and the Xbox One came in at $499. This is what gave PlayStation its huge boost in this era, and overall PlayStation sold 106 million units. Roughly, this is an estimate because the figures aren't 100% confirmed yet because they're still selling, and obviously the Xbox One only sold around 47 million. This was a huge change for these two consoles and gave PlayStation the huge advantage once again, and that's basically 3 to 4 years of victories there for PlayStation. Concluding from the history of these consoles, we can assume that the best price for the consoles going off the past and their previous results would be $399. Now will the console actually be $399? The answer to that question is no. If it is, I'll explain why it could be in a second, but that's the conclusion there from the history side of stuff. Now let's move on to a little bit further and dive into some information on potentially why the console might actually be at $399. So originally Xbox actually introduced the Xbox Game Pass and Xbox Live way before PlayStation introduced their versions of these. Now what this has done is it's allowed the company to build up a huge surplus amount of cash, and obviously they can put that cash towards creating lost leaders such as the consoles. Now a lost leader leader is where a company provides something a lot cheaper and may even make a loss on it so they can get the product out there to as many people as possible, as well as also make as much profit as they can from other services which are in the Xbox or PlayStation side of stuff. And they would obviously be subscription based things like the Xbox Game Pass and obviously the Xbox Live service, or even the PlayStation side which has similar things. So definitely some interesting things there, creating that loss leader element, which we can assume is probably going to happen. This is because we do have an estimate for the price of each console, which we'll go into in a second. But just before I go into that, I just want to mention one statement from obviously the CEO over at PlayStation, which is Jim Ryan, and he's actually gone ahead and said Sony wants to emphasize value as opposed to price. So it's kind of an interesting point now, because when you think of it, you think, what do these mean exactly by value? Well, I was thinking he probably means he wants the console to be a very, very good standard, even though the price may be a little bit overpriced. Or maybe he's trying to make the price as low as possible to get a really good value on the console. In my opinion, I think it's the first option on that side. So that could actually mean PlayStation could be coming in with a really high price. Definitely some interesting stuff there to consider regarding that. Guys, if you want to keep up to date with all this sort of content on gaming news, make sure you're smashing subscribe and notification bell. Thank you so much. And also, if you generally own a PC or play Fortnite or anything like that and want to support the channel and enjoy this sort of content, you can go and enter in code postboxpat on the Epic Games Store or on the Fortnite item shop. It really will help out the channel. I am a hashtag Epic Games partner, and all you've simply got to do is, if you buy anything off the Epic Games Store, for example the new Star Wars game which has been announced, you've just got to enter in my creator code postboxpat, and it'll really help me out and go a long way, and it really does support this sort of content. So thank you everybody doing that. We're currently in a massive staring contest between PlayStation and Xbox because they're waiting for each company to release their price for their new upcoming console. Obviously, I don't know which one's going to release it first. I have a feeling it might be Xbox, and we'll talk about that later on. But let me know in the comments, which company do you think is going to release their price first? But let's have a look at some of the prices estimated for the cost of each console. So according to several sources online, the cost of manufacturing an Xbox One Series X will vary between $460 and $520. And then on the PlayStation side of stuff, the estimated cost is going to be $450. So this is the cost of actually building a PlayStation from scratch for Microsoft and Sony to do this. So definitely something interesting to consider right there, because this could easily reflect on the price. Now, if they want to make a profit, obviously the price is going to be above this. Now, if we can assume that both companies are going to be aiming to make a profit, then we could imagine the price being a lot higher, easily between obviously around 500 to 600 easily if they want to make a profit. Now, do consider that PlayStation does have the confirmed non-disk drive version, and we can assume, according to many tech YouTubers and other tech sources out there, that the disk drive will remove about $50 off the price. We'll go into other prices at the end in other currencies just to confirm in the final conclusion. Just for those wondering, why am I working this in dollars even though I'm from the UK? It's just because dollar is probably the well-known format around the entire world, and it's what these companies work in. So that's why I thought I'd just use dollar, just on a little side note, right? But at the end, we'll transpose it into many other currencies so you guys can see. So, like I was saying though, I do think that definitely these prices are something interesting because, you know, generally speaking, you've just got to think about it. Are they going to aim to make this profit here? And if they do, will that non-disk drive version even be on the profit margin? And potentially yes. If they do aim for a profit, the full digital version of that PlayStation could be aiming to be around $450, meaning the final version with the disk drive could be aiming to be around $500. And that would be the same with the Xbox side of stuff. Would the Xbox cost Xbox, would the price be for it about $550, $500? Because Xbox is also rumored to introduce the smaller version of the console, which would be the Xbox Series S. So this would obviously be like a smaller box of it. We haven't got any confirmation on this, but it's almost confirmed according to leaks that this will be half the price of the current Xbox, almost the same specs as well, and will be a fully digital version. So if that was the case, and the Xbox was slightly higher than the PlayStation on the price, but they had a smaller console for half the price, cutting in at around the 300 mark, maybe even lower, I think so many people would just go, wow, that is the one. Or they might want to spend a little bit more for a better spec console like the Xbox Series X. And we've also talked about specs in my previous video. If you haven't checked it out, I highly recommend it. We talked about between the two consoles, and they're basically on par with specs, with the Xbox having a slightly advantage in one section and the PlayStation having an advantage in the other section. I don't want to go into it again because we've already gone into that. So they're basically on par, but it's an interesting topic to debate. And obviously we've still got to wait for Xbox's event next month, and we'll definitely break down everything from there for you guys as news does start to appear from there. So with that being said, I wanted to break down a little bit more details for you guys on the leaks, because a lot of people have been saying about these leaks that we've been seeing going all around. And I know there's so many. There's one coming in from Amazon France, and there's also one coming in from Play Asia, and I think I'd break these down for you guys as kind of a little bit of a placeholder. So these leaks generally show some different prices completely. So you can see here that Play Asia is showing the price to roughly be about $700 in the US, which is crazy high price. But this is only a placeholder price, as in the past Play Asia have actually done this for a bunch of different products. They usually charge slightly over or try and predict what it is going to be over the actual price. Now the next one is actually coming from Amazon France. So this is interesting. So 500 euros is what they've priced it on here as, and obviously the release date for it is the 20th of November, which would probably be around the time that this would actually be released. You know, generally speaking, they would probably want to release it in that November period right before Christmas, and obviously when a lot of games and titles are coming out. So 500 euros translates to roughly about $563 today, so you could probably round it down a little bit to about 550 maybe, should we say. So that's probably what you'd get on the PlayStation 5 side of stuff. Now reflecting that to the Xbox, that could mean the Xbox I do think would be slightly more expensive than the PlayStation, but we'll have obviously that smaller version which is going to be so much cheaper. I do think that will be the case, only because, I don't know, I think it'll definitely be the same price as maybe the disc drive version of the PlayStation 5, but I also think that the PlayStation 5's non-disc drive, the digital version, will be lower priced than the Xbox Series X, but then Xbox Series S will be out there, which should be confirmed at the next event. Obviously, I can't 100% guarantee that the Xbox Series S is going to exist for everybody out there, but I'm almost certain that they will definitely bring out a second version of a console because of what PlayStation have done. So definitely some interesting stuff there, which we should consider on the price. So one great point, in my opinion, which will affect the price of these two consoles and the purchasable power between us as consumers. Also, guys, let me know in the comments, which one are you aiming to purchase right now as of today? If you could buy one right now, which one would you pick? Let me know in the comments. Let's try and not cause a comment battle, but let's just comment generally about honest opinions like we always do, like you did in the last video. You guys were great at it. So what I want to say is Xbox have officially announced this program where they're going to be able to actually buy, or you're going to be able to buy the console off them, and you're going to be able to pay monthly for it. Now, there's not been confirmed on the details of interest added onto this, but if Xbox do what Apple did with this, obviously the price itself would have zero interest on it. So Apple in the UK have a kind of like a loan type system where you loan money from the bank and you pay zero interest on it, and you pay for the product over 12 to 24 months with zero interest. And I think that is what Xbox might introduce on their higher end console. I definitely think this would increase the sales 100% on Xbox's side of stuff. And that with PlayStation, are they going to follow on this line? I don't know, but I do know in the UK, I'm not too sure about elsewhere in the world, but in the UK you can actually get a console on your phone service. So say if you have an iPhone or whatever you have, or contract, you can actually order a console as well on the side as like a plus bonus. Sometimes you get discounts on them and stuff, so maybe if they partner up with phone providers or phone services, we might even see the consoles even have more discount on that side of stuff. I know that EE, which is a UK brand, have partnered up with Xbox, and I think even O2 may have partnered up with Sony. I'm not too sure on the O2 side, but I know EE definitely you could order an Xbox on the side of my phone. So some interesting stuff really to consider generally about how these partners can work in correlation with obviously the phone services out there. That could definitely affect people's purchasing options and power, etc., and all that sort of stuff. So let's move on to a little bit of a discussion about the titles though, because I think this is kind of an important point as well. So the Spider-Man game has been confirmed to be half the size of the original Spider-Man, basically a complete copy and paste of the game but in a winter setting. So that definitely gives a negative light on PlayStation's side in my opinion, but obviously you may have a different opinion on that. But obviously Xbox as well has all its titles on Windows 10, most of them anyway, so that also puts a negative light on that. Like, why would you just produce a brand new console and then allow people just to play it on PC if you've got Windows 10 exclusive? So kind of an interesting point there as well to make on that side. So obviously that's something that Xbox are working towards and may combat a little bit, and we may hear more news on that in the announcement. So I do generally think this will come into your price decision as well at which one you're going to buy. If you're going to buy a non-digital version, you've got to assume you're probably going to be paying more for the games. You also can't share the games with your friends unless you do like an inbuilt game share. I'm not too sure if there is a game share option on PlayStation, but if you have a disc, obviously you can send it to your friend in the post, or you can go around and deliver it to him or whatever, and you can share the game, or you can even sell it on. Whereas if you don't own the game physically, then you can't do that because you get it stuck on your drive digitally. And that was something that people wanted to do on, well, especially at Microsoft when the Xbox One originally launched. They wanted to actually introduce this third-party market type thing. It was really complicated what was going on, and it really made the Xbox flop. It made it too complicated. But now we're hitting an era where digital is really starting to overtake physical, and obviously we know that the physical side of stuff is still a lot of people's way. I think a lot of people still use discs. I know I personally buy the games digitally because I game share, but I know a lot of people might not do that, and they may still physically buy them and game share that way, but it's really optional. But I do think this will make your decision really key on which one you're going to purchase console wise, because basically Microsoft are probably going to announce their digital version, the smaller version. So I do think that definitely this decision will depend on what you got to work out. So if you think about it, if you're buying the physical console with the disc drive, you still have the option to buy the digital games, and also you may get the games cheaper on the physical disc. But if you want to go a little bit more cheaper on the console side of stuff, but you want to buy the digital version, you may be paying more money in the long run. So it's something definitely to consider on maybe which one you want to buy. Personally, I'm probably just going to go with the digital versions because I always just buy digital games. But I do generally think for a lot of people this is an important decision, because if you think about it, in the long run you will be paying more. However, if you go with stuff like game passes and play the free games and the games with gold and stuff like that, then this isn't something really for you to consider regarding the price of each console. So I don't know, it's generally something which you've just really got to look into and think about that a little bit further for yourself. I can't really help with that decision. It's obviously down to your own financial decision. So have a little think about it on that side of stuff anyway. Thought it was an interesting point to mention. I've kind of gone over it a little bit too much, but I think it's definitely important. And finally, we're going to move on to our conclusion. After debating through history and lost leaders and so much more between the Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5, here are my price predictions. So do consider the PlayStation 5 one on the right hand side is because it is the digital version. If this was the one with the disc drive, we could add another $50 onto the price. Now, I want to say something pretty interesting between the pound and euro side of stuff. For those based in Europe and UK like myself, I generally do think we'll be matching the dollar price due to past market experience from other tech giants pricing their price as the same as the dollar as in the UK. Now, obviously, this is different slightly because in the US, I know there is tax on the sales which isn't already included, whereas in the UK, tax is already included in the sale. But they basically look the same price when you look on the website. So I do think we're only going to have a little bit less in the UK on that price and stuff like that. But I do think the PlayStation, you could easily add another $50 onto it if you're going to get the disc drive version, which puts these consoles almost on par. I generally do think the Xbox might be a little bit slightly higher, but then I also have that sneaky feel that, you know, potentially, you know, when they said about the CEO talking about the price isn't always the key thing, I do think PlayStation might be a little bit higher than Xbox as well, because their console is including that adapted controller, and that controller ain't no simple thing to craft. You know, the Xbox controller is just so much laid back, it's just a simple controller, and obviously their controller is much probably better than the Xbox, if we could say it in that sense. It gives it an advantage, definitely, but it could also bump up the price by another $50. So again, another big debatable thing right there. And there's obviously the cross-platform thing as well, which is going on. We haven't even talked about that in today's video. We'll talk about it in another video. But basically, cross-platform on the Xbox side of stuff is going to be so much better than it is on the PlayStation, because it goes all the way back to the original Xbox titles, whereas the PlayStation hasn't even really confirmed much about its cross-platform yet. We'll go into that in a little bit more detail, though, in the future. Then also, guys, I just want to say, if you do think the difference between these is huge, it is. And don't check out my other video where I talked about spec, games, and so much more. It's at the end of this video. But before we get to that, I want you guys to comment down below which one do you think is going to release the price first, and what do you think the price is going to be. You saw my prediction. I generally think this video has provided a really good educational guess of exactly what these companies would be looking at to obviously price up their console. They're going to want to price their console up similar to what we've experienced in history. They're not going to want to suddenly go, oh, here are the new consoles, $700, $800. They're not going to do that, I don't think. If they do, there'll be a huge uproar in the community across the board. Now, generally speaking, though, you've got to think about the parts. This is really affecting the PC industry as well. If you were to go and build a PC for $1,000, I can guarantee you that these consoles will almost be more powerful than your PC that you're going to build for $1,000. Again, it's a great question there, thinking, is this going to stop people from buying PCs? Maybe. In the early market, if you're not fully speccing it out for like $4 or $5 grand PCs, you could be looking at someone buying one of these consoles instead of a PC because of the spec, and I generally do think a lot of people will do that. And even if you do have a PC, I generally do think you're probably going to have access to one of these consoles as well for some of the exclusives if you want to play them, etc. Obviously that is debatable, but like I said, let me know in the comments, who do you think is going to release the price first, and what do you think the price is going to be? Thank you so much for watching, guys. I'll see you guys in the future content, and don't forget to go and check out my last Xbox v PlayStation video, or PlayStation v Xbox, whichever way you want to say it, over on the channel there. It's a great video and it goes over specs and so much more. Check it out, guys. I'll see you guys over there.